Okay, I want to welcome you to this session of the Leadership Talk Show. I'm your host, Victor Vogel. We're going to do a special session this evening, focusing primarily on leadership as it relates to selecting your candidate. So here is the deal about selecting candidates. That's coming up. The primaries are coming up, and then the midterm elections will be coming up in November. And so often it's how do I know which candidate to pick? Well, I want to offer an opportunity for you to consider um, something that's pretty much tried and true in terms of selecting the right people. And talk a little bit about some of the dynamics and things that make sense for you selecting a candidate. First of all, I want to guide you back to my podcasts on leadership. There are about 8 of them, or maybe 9. I want you to go back and listen to those podcasts primarily because they will be your guide, one of the primary guides for selecting the best possible candidate. So let's figure this. How many times have you been involved in selecting leaders who made this promise or that promise, sounded great at the time, never delivered? We kind of have a president at that mark right now. About the only thing he's delivered is a tax bill, and it wasn't the tax bill that he promised. He promised not to increase the debt while reducing your taxes, but that's not the case. It costs us $1 trillion to have that tax reduction. He said most of it will go to the middle class, and as far as I can see, the middle class is not prospering that much from the tax bill, but large corporations, businesses, and things like that, who supposedly created a lot more jobs. Well, they've created the jobs. They may have created 130,000 jobs a month. Divide that by somewhere in the name of 200 million people who are a potential working populace, and you begin to find out that that job production or increase is really just like a creep in increasing jobs, and we don't know that it's going to sustain. But that's a different story. You can go back and look at that and look at all that for your facts for yourself. But let me just say this. If you select someone to lead this country, and that's what we're talking about, leadership, your first and primary and most important decision is this a good leader? Is this someone who can lead us, that I can look to and believe and follow and trust to take us down the right path? So leadership is no small factor, whether it's a man or a woman who's running, no matter what race they're running, no matter what gender, even age shouldn't be impacting this. Leadership qualities are the things we cover in the Leadership Talk Show that's on Apple Podcasts and another podcast also. And I'll put some links to where you can find those shows. But they cover things like, trust and ethics and the type of power bases that leaders use. And you can see through this that I used Donald Trump as an example of a poor leader, someone who's not leading well. And certainly there is a small segment of the population who will disagree with that. But even among his supporters, many of them don't like the way he behaves, but they're hoping he will deliver what they've been wanting, and that is some sort of change that will make things better for them. Right now, If you go out and look at a lot of the surveys or the interviews that have been done with these people, they still support him, but he hasn't delivered anything yet that's significant enough to make a major change, particularly in the middle class. Now, if you happen to own a business or you happen to be a millionaire, yeah, they're excited about him. But that's not the majority of people in this country. So when you're out there, some things you need to consider. We talk about ethics. Does the person whom you're looking at and wanting to place into position, have they, put forth all the information you need to see and hear about their history and their past and things that might get in the way for them down the road? Is this we've often said that you can predict future behavior by looking at past behavior. That's pretty much true. So if you look at this person's history, they're just not just their college education, all that, but their history, how they've lived their life, what they have stood for throughout their life, how they have conducted themselves within the public and privately, has a lot to do with the character of that individual. So you can go to their Facebook page, you can go to their LinkedIn page, you can go to other places and not only find out their basic skill quality. So it's like hiring in a company. If you are hiring someone into the company, you're not just hiring a person's skill. You want to find somebody who fits, who meets the kinds of qualifications and character that you're looking for in an employee. This is the same way. That's what we're doing. We're hiring an employee to represent us, and we are the boss. And we want to look at that employee not just from the standpoint that they were in the Senate or that they're a doctor or a successful business person or whatever. Actually, many of those people fail from the character standpoint and have been very, very bad for our government. We've seen that time after time for people who have been up in Congress. Their past behavior begins to fall out. And next thing we know, they're resigning because of sexual harassment, or, they said something they shouldn't say, or they didn't know how to behave, or they weren't clear about who they were and what they were about. So we talk about people, you want to look at their cultural background, their behavior. What are the core values that are important to this person? Is it people? Is it money? Is it a combination of both of those? If so, which one is the most prominent? What's most important to you relative to those core values? And the second thing you need to look at is, how do they tend to lead people? How, when you go and talk to people about them, they can be all sugar sweet and everything in front of a camera. But if you go out and talk to people who worked for them in the past, if you go out and talk with people who are around them in church environments or whatever, you begin to find out who the true character is. How do they live their life? Do they believe in things like love and compassion and caring and honesty and truth and commitment to their fellow man? Do they believe in those kinds of things? Or are they more focused on, net revenues and the economy growing at 4.1%? The economy can grow at 4.1%, and it doesn't mean a whole lot to a person who's living from paycheck to paycheck and they still can't get through. Okay, because their pay increases don't go up significantly every year like your economy grows when you invest in a manufacturing plant, and all of a sudden you have great wealth out of that, and that's free economy. And yes, everybody should have an opportunity to that, but we realize everybody, in all honesty, doesn't have an equal shot at doing that. Many times the people who are in those positions, like Donald Trump, who received a lot of money up front, okay, they received a lot of money up front. before they became successful in their business. So most people don't have that option. Most of the people who are your fire department heads and those kinds of things, they just don't have those options. So, what is the character of this person? Are they really someone you feel comfortable around, that you would make your friend, that you would enjoy being with or associating with or socializing with? Do they represent your core values? That's even more important than what they've done as a senator, a lawyer, or whatever it might be. Then the question becomes, can you trust them? Trust is a big component of what we want in leadership out of our representatives in government. And so I believe in the series on communication and trust, I bring out the points that there are some things about trust that are very evident when you look at people's behavior. One of them is consistency. Are they consistent? Do they do the same thing pretty much the same way as we go through their work habits, their how they performed, what they've done? Is it consistent? Are they pretty much consistent about what they're seeking, their core values, etc.? Another one is congruency. Do they behave the way they say? In other words, when they utter words and tell you they believe in something, but turn around and behave differently, that's incongruent. That is not a leader we want guiding us. We want people, when they say something, we can count on their behavior representing what they say. Okay, so that's another thing to look for. You can go through history and see if somebody congruent or whether they switch back and forth or they're not doing what they said they would do. They're not behaving the way they say they behave. We see that in this president of the United States consistently. He says he's a great leader. He's a smart guy. He makes mistakes on his tweets. He doesn't, his rally speeches are incoherent a lot of times. Yet he says he is the greatest. Yeah, it's not the case. There's no performance to indicate. That's an incongruent leader. That's not the kind of leader you want representing you and your government. Okay, and so as we go down through these behaviors, there's compassion. Is this a person who cares about people? You can have all the money in the world, but that can be taken away from you in a flash, trust me. You have to believe that this person's core values are about love and compassion and caring about other people. That's the kind of leader we want. You can have a growth economy, you can have growth in business, you can have security, you can have all of those things and still have concern for people, wanting to unify people, having compassion for everyone in the United States of America, not just a few. Or your constituents. As this person see their job in terms of a role, and role is another aspect. What do they see their role as? Are they just there to do what you want in your small little district? Because that's not what their role is in Congress. Their role is to represent you as a representative of the whole mass of U.S. citizens. So when they're voting on something, they're not just voting on it for you, nor should they. They're voting on it representing the best interests of the United States as a whole and be able to explain to you how that is best suited for you. So we want to make sure that kind of stuff is happening when you look for it. There are just a few things that you can take a look at and understand and look for in the leadership you're going to vote for. Now, I hope this is helpful, but I will tell you this. Uh, I would rather almost have a totally inexperienced person that has good leadership qualities and traits and can go up there and stick to their guns, be consistent, be congruent, be compassionate, be caring, uh, be competent at what they're doing, show competency. That's another aspect of trust that's important. Do they know what they're talking about? When you read the president's tweets, and even his own party gets confused by it, his own staff get confused by it consistently. So we don't want someone like that in representing us in Congress, or frankly representing us as a president. They may have the best ideas in the world, but if they are pretty much a narcissist and just out for themselves, or they're seeking that reputation or whatever, as opposed to the true need to be service based. This is a service based position. Okay. It's a service leadership position. So we want to make sure people understand that, who we put into position, and that they represent, their role is not just the constituency they represent. It is them as a microcosm of a bigger group, the United States of America, that they represent. So don't expect them just to do something that might be right for you but wrong for the rest of America. That wouldn't necessarily be the right approach to go. You want somebody who can look you dead in the eyes and say, look, this bill we're working on here may not be in the total best interest, but in the long term, it's in the best interest of the United States. That will come back to you. And they need to be able to explain that to you. So they need to be able to communicate consistently. They need to open up two-way channels and listen and not just get off. This is the kind of person who's a leader who's going to be here, decide to fly in on Friday night, conduct an open house on Saturday morning, and fly back Sunday morning to DC ready to do business. Okay. And if they need to do that every weekend, they would do that every weekend. Okay. That's the kind of leader we want in our Congress. So when you're looking at all of these people who are leaders in this organization called our government, you're hiring them, okay? This is your hire. You become accountable for who they are. You cannot blame anybody else but yourselves for putting this person in position. So take the time, the same time you would take if you were hiring an employee, take the time to make sure you got the very best quality leader you can find. And if you go back and listen to all of these shows I've done, you're going to find you have a pretty good base of knowledge to begin to assess people. And it's pretty obvious based on their behavior, both past behavior, current behavior, what their future behavior is going to be like. You'll have a baseline to compare these people to. Okay, a baseline is something that you can look at and say, this is what I consider acceptable. Is this person's behavior been acceptable to that? If the answer is no, then you don't hire them or you don't vote for them. Okay, so you are in charge here, and that's important for you to remember. So continue to do that. Continue to stay in charge, continue to make the right decisions, hiring a quality leader into the position. That doesn't mean they're not competent. Okay, they need to be competent also. They need to know what they're talking about. They need to have their facts together. They need to know how to chew gum and walk at the same time. They need not to be liars or cheats or people who attack other people. These leaders who we put in position, you can just look at the ads. If you've got a leader who is attacking the other guy, that's not a leader. Okay, he's not standing on his merits and he's not standing on what he believes. He is attacking what the other person believes. And I'm telling you, That's not the kind of leader I want in Congress. So anybody who runs those negative ads like that, they're automatically off of my vote list, period. You know, I look for somebody who is looking and saying, okay, here's what you need. Here's what I believe. And here's what I want to deliver you. And if that lines up with what I'm looking for, then they're going to have my vote. Because that is a leader who is, you know, competent, caring, consistent, compassionate, congruent. That's a leader who's operating from a power base of information sharing and, you know, caring about other people and partaking and getting his constituency involved, but at the same time, understanding the real role that you have as a representative for the United States of America, not just your constituents, and bring that back to your people and be able to explain why, you know, it may not fit 100% what they're looking for, but they need to accept this right now because it's the best thing for America. That's a hard task. That's a hard task because people only want what they want now in this country. And unfortunately, that's led us down the path of selfishness and greed. And that's kind of what's put us in the problem we're in right now. So you can see what happens, one, when you don't select the right leader for the job. You can also see what happens when you decide to abdicate from your responsibility of hiring somebody for that job by not voting. Then you get something less than you were needing and expecting. And you can't complain about it. You just can't complain about it because it's your fault for allowing that person to get in there. Whether you voted for that, if you didn't vote for that person, it's definitely your fault because you didn't vote in a way that kept them out. And then secondly, if you voted for them and you voted for the wrong person, you're still accountable for your hire, just like a person in business. Unfortunately, you don't have a lot of say on how to get them out of there. That's why you need to be exceptionally careful when voting this year and in 2020 or voting period. You need to be exceptionally careful, take an interest, find the right leaders. Go to that, the Leadership Talk Show podcast on Apple, iTunes. Listen to those and use those criteria to find out whether the person you want to put in position is a good leader or not. Okay, if nothing else, get out there and vote. I hope this has been helpful to you. It's something I use now to select people. And I can honestly say I didn't vote for Donald Trump because I saw these leadership characteristics void in him. And certainly has proven to be the case. So I encourage you to go out and vote wherever you choose to vote for. Just make sure you're voting a leader who's competent in the position. Have a great day. Go vote. I'm Victor Vogel for the Leadership Talk Show.